Hey everyone, welcome to my review of the Caselabs Magnum THW10. Caselabs has perfected something which most other manufacturers cannot even grasp, an area of the market for enthusiasts and high-end water cooling. Before Caselabs, there were so many limitations when building a high-end water-cooled system. Caselabs removed these limitations and took high-end water cooling to a whole new level. They introduced a level of quality which we hadn't really seen previously, with their full aluminium cases, no plastics, durable powder coating, cases which last forever. Also their practical modular design with so many different add-ons and accessories, a fully upgradable case, and an aesthetic which is neutral enough where just about everybody loves it and it suits almost any build. Caselabs has certainly perfected something which many of us want, which has definitely been shown by their success. I have the Caselabs Magnum TH10A on the left and the THW10 on the right. The design of the THW10 is certainly based on the TH10A. And you can see from the outside they do look fairly similar, but the THW10 is slightly taller and wider. It is actually the same length though, but the major differences are certainly on the inside of the case. And there are some epic upgrades that the THW10 has. When you receive your Caselabs case, it is very well wrapped in a reinforced cardboard box with foam and bubble wrap. Everything is individually packaged in plastic, individually labeled. You can really see the time and the effort that is put into the packaging. You can see that the manual is very easy to follow with printed images, and you hardly need a manual for Caselabs cases because they are very easy to assemble. You always receive a lot of extra accessories and components, usually a lot more than you need with a Caselabs case. And there's a lot of little extras. For example, there are some case feet here which you can use on the back of the removable motherboard tray, which allows you to use the motherboard tray as a test bed. So depending on the configuration you go for, it's good to have all of these extra components because there are so many different options with Caselabs cases. It's now time for us to start taking a detailed look at the case. The first thing I noticed looking at the front panel, comparing this case to the TH10A, is that this case has 5.25 inch bays all the way down both sides. And this is an amazing addition because it means that this case is, first of all, symmetrical. Both front and rear compartments are the same size, which means a lot more space in the rear compartment for installing water cooling components or whatever else you're going to be installing there. It also means twice as many 5.25 inch bays, and Caselabs has a number of different accessories and options for 5.25 inch bays for mounting radiators, fans, hard drives, so this gives you a lot more options. Now this is just a sticker which comes included with the case. You can stick it anywhere on the case. The front cover panel itself is standard. There's no other options for the front cover panel, but the switch panel has a number of different options. The option that I have here is a 22mm blue ring vandal switch, which shows power on for the power button, and a 16mm red dot vandal switch, which shows hard drive activity for the reset button. You can also have this switch panel completely blanked off, or you can have front panel I/O with 4 USB 3 and audio. So you can see that the vandal switches have sleeved cables. Everything is black, including the wire and the connectors, so it all matches up nicely. The top panel cover has ventilation down both sides for the radiator and fan mounting positions underneath. Unlike the TH10A, this is a standard top panel cover. There are currently no other options. There's enough room for mounting the fans up in the top section. There are 3 different options for the side panels. I have the XXL window. There's also a solid and a ventilated option. The ventilated version, the ventilation actually lines up with the power supply mounting positions, which allows ventilation to the power supplies from the outside of the case. The outer panels are very quick and easy to remove from a Caselabs case. Within seconds, you can have all of the outer panels off the case and be building. This makes these cases a breeze to build into. Caselabs has this great system with these sprung components and ball mounts or lugs. The cases come with replacements for these components, but they're very durable. I've never had to replace them. And the side panels are hinged with a simple but effective system where all you have to do to remove the side panels is lift them slightly. Now that we've removed the front panel cover, you can see it gives us full access to all of the mounting components for the 5.25 inch bays. And I have a number of different options here from Caselabs for the 5.25 inch bays, but first we're going to take a look at the mounting system. Now there's small rods on the back, on the inside, which act as guides for the components. So you can actually push them on and they stay in position while you are tightening up the thumb screws from around the front. It's a system that works very well. So on one side here, I have a single bay cover at the top, and then a component for mounting a 480mm radiator or 4 120mm fans. On this side, I have a number of different size bay covers and 2 quad 3.5 inch hard drive bays. This 480mm radiator mounting component comes in single, dual, triple, and quad, which is this one, and also the same options for 140mm. The bay covers come in single, dual, and triple. Now for a closer look at the quad 3.5 inch bays. You can see that they fit a fan in the front, actually a 120mm fan. The ventilated section at the front is easily removable to make installing the fan very quick and easy. There are 3.5 inch to 2.5 inch bay converters available from Caselabs, which allow you to install SSDs into these bays. So you can either install 4 3.5 inch or 4 2.5 inch devices. You can see how the fan mounts in the front, and that these bays are also well protected from vibration. Not only do we have anti-vibration washers at the front, we also have them directly on the hard drives, and you can see the 2.5 inch bay converter installed there. I've now removed all of the 5.25 inch bay devices, and you can see how simple and elegant the design of this case is, and also the symmetry between the compartments, which is something that I really like about this case. So let's take a look at the top panel. You can see the cutouts up here. These are for running the fan wiring up into the top section of the case, because as I've mentioned, you can install the fans in the top section above the top panel. So these are the radiator mounts, and they come in two different versions, 560mm or 480mm. And that's the great thing about drop-in mounts. It really cleans up the design of the case, allows for different radiator mounting options, and also allows for an easier installation because you can install the mount onto the radiator and then install the entire config at once, and it's only 6 screws to install these mounts. You can see that they're recessed, and this is what allows the fans to fit up into the top section of the case while having such a low profile top panel cover. And you can see how the fan wiring routes. Now the top panel cover, there's about probably a 3mm gap between the fan and the top panel cover, and it's a very tight fit. The bolts are actually touching the top panel cover, but it certainly fits, so that's not a problem. Looking underneath the case, you can see the nice big rubber durable case feet which bolt on with an M6 bolt. So very strong and durable. You have a number of different threads options to mount onto here because there's actually 4 threads in each corner, and that's because you have an option for mounting casters, wheels, onto a lot of Caselabs cases. Because you build into a case like this, you do an extreme water-cooled system, it ends up being very heavy. So wheels are actually a very good option for a case like this. But I usually install the case feet in from the outside so that they don't interfere with the side panels. Looking at the back panel, in the bottom corner here, you can see a cutout with a plastic cover. Above this is the dual power supply mounting positions. The power supplies mount facing both ways, but if you're going to have them facing outwards, you should use the ventilated side panel option. Facing inwards, it doesn't matter which side panel you use, there is plenty of room for ventilation. You can see some extra mounting holes here. These are for an optional extra power supply reinforcing panel, which you should use if you're going to be using heavy, long power supplies. The motherboard tray is removable. Down the side here we have honeycomb ventilation. We have a 120mm fan mounting position, a nice big handle for removing the motherboard tray. The thumb screws which hold the motherboard tray in position are fixed so they don't come off the motherboard tray. They're also sprung. And this motherboard tray has 10 expansion slots. Now it's on a rail and it's a very well designed system. It slides easily into the case and can be easily removed, even when it's loaded with hardware. And actually, usually that's what I do with these cases, is install my motherboard, graphics cards, everything, and then slide it into position. It's time for a look at the main compartment of the case. Now, first of all, there's a few different options for the mid panel. It's reversible, so you can have the motherboard facing either side panel. There's also two different options for the motherboard tray, XL80X, which is what I have here, and HPTX, which is substantially larger and requires a different mid panel. You can see the CPU backplate cutout is a good size and well positioned. And there's also a cover on the back of the motherboard tray. We'll take a look at this from around the back shortly. The expansion slot covers are held in position by thumb screws, and the motherboard tray is one of the only parts of the case which is actually assembled using rivets. Any parts of the case which never need to be disassembled have rivets. For example, the reinforcing, which runs all the way down the center of the mid panel here, and you can see the rivets for that from around the front here. Now, the cable routing cutouts are well positioned and a good size, and you can see the rubber channeling that is run around the inside of these cutouts. Now, keep in mind, these cutouts are not just for routing cables, they're also for routing tubing, because you're going to potentially need to run your tubing from one compartment to the other. Now, this small cover panel at the front of the case here is to cover up the sides of the power and reset buttons, because they are directly in the center of the case, and so is the mid panel. And so to cover up the sides of the switches to clean things up, you need to have an offset panel. And next to this is a dual reservoir mounting panel. There's a few different options for reservoir mounting panels. There's also a single, so you can use one single, you can use two singles, or a dual. The Caselabs Magnum THW10 fits four 480mm radiators by default. This case fits four 560mm radiators, but it's the same length, which means that the radiators take up a lot more space at the top and bottom of the case. The gaps at the front and back are a lot smaller. So something you need to consider is, depending on your radiator configuration, the thickness of your radiator, whether you're using push-pull, you may end up cancelling out a couple of 5.25-inch bays at the top and bottom of the case. So if you wanted to install a fan controller, a Quero 6, something like that, in the top 5.25-inch bay, you may actually have to move it down a couple of bays to make room for your radiator configuration. And a component like this, if you were crazy enough to install, four 560mm radiators and still wanted another radiator in the 5.25-inch bays at the front here, for example, using this component that I have here, which is designed to fit up to a 480mm radiator, well, you wouldn't actually be able to fit a 480. You'd probably be able to fit a 360, certainly a 240, but these are limitations, if you can even call them limitations, that you need to consider, because the radiators take up a lot more room in this case. But, I'd certainly rather have the 560s, because 560mm is an incredible radiator size. It can handle anything, and four of them can handle anything that you install into this case. I mean, it could handle four systems. I've installed the quad 3.5-inch bays in the main compartment of the case, just to give you an idea of what is possible here. So you can install up to 32 3.5-inch or 2.5-inch devices using these quad bays. And that's if you populate all of the 5.25-inch bays with them. And that is absolutely incredible that you can fit that many hard drives or SSDs into the front of this case. You can still fit 16 with push-pull 560mm radiator configurations with thick radiators. I mean, the possibilities here are amazing to think about. Now for a look at the rear compartment. Now, the first thing that I notice about this rear compartment is how massive it is, because I'm used to the TH10A. I've done many TH10A builds in the past, and this rear compartment is a lot bigger. Looking at the inside of the rear panel of the case, you can see just how much more space there is between the power supplies and the motherboard tray. That used to be a small gap. Now it's massive, plenty of airflow, plenty of room for mounting, cables and components onto the back of the motherboard tray. Now, I really like the motherboard tray design. The way the rails are bolted onto the back of the mid panel, it just works very well. It's really clean from around the front, and the motherboard tray is actually recessed a little bit. It protrudes on this side, but it's recessed from the main compartment side, which means that the motherboard is almost level with the mid panel. So, you know, it looks amazing. It's an excellent design for the motherboard tray. You can see the reinforcing that goes all the way down the middle here of the mid panel. And you'll see that there are a lot of these lugs for cable management, for using cable ties or whatever you're going to use to tie up your cables. Next to each cable routing hole, you have at least 2 of them minimum, and there is plenty of them. They're well positioned. I've done cable management many times in the TH10, STH10, and other Caselabs cases, and you know, it's always a breeze. If you're not planning on installing 2 power supplies into this case, you can see there is a cover for the second power supply mounting position. And that pretty much goes for everything in Caselabs cases. If you're not going to be installing a component, there's always a cover for that mounting position. You can see I've removed the cover from the back of the motherboard tray, and how this gives you access to motherboard backplates. It's just 5 screws to remove that panel. You can also see how much that panel cleans things up back here and gives you more mounting space for cables and other components. It's now time for me to conclude this review. Now, the first thing that came to mind when thinking about this conclusion is that I can't think of anything wrong with this case. I have so many good memories of building into the TH10 and the TH10A, and all Caselabs cases for that matter. And I couldn't find anything wrong with the TH10A, and this case is a major evolution of that case with 4 560mm radiators, a size that I always try to use whenever I can because it can handle anything that you throw at it. The symmetry of the design, the extra space in the rear compartment, more 5.25-inch bays. The design has been refined. For example, there is less customizations for the top panel because they're just not needed, because this case is purely focused on performance. If I were to think really hard, you know, to find something wrong with this case, the common complaints about Caselabs cases come to mind. The aesthetics, you know, that Caselabs hasn't been creative with the aesthetics, that these cases are just boxes, but there's so many different reasons for that. I much prefer a blank canvas to work with. Leave the modding up to us instead of a manufacturer taking it halfway and then you have to modify it anyway. Also a neutral aesthetic, because otherwise some people are going to like it, some people are not. That is even more important with a case. And also the fact that Caselabs cases are focused purely on performance and functionality instead of, you know, aesthetics and looking pretty. And their design really works with the modular design. The quality is unmatched. The aluminium, the powder coating, these cases are built to last forever. So I absolutely love this case. I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10, and I'm also going to give it the SingularityComputers Performance Award. I have no doubt I'm going to be doing many builds into this case coming up, and there is actually a build going into this case in particular, an incredible build which you are going to see coming up. So that sums up this review. Remember, if you enjoy our content, to check the video description for ways that you can help to grow the channel and join us in our goals for Singularity Computers. A massive thanks to our patrons. Without them, none of this would be possible, and you will see Singularity Computers stepping up to 3 videos per week soon. And that is all thanks to our patrons. Also, a big thanks to Caselabs for sending this case out for review. Thanks for watching.